The Mid-America Veterans Museum is a 501c3 nonprofit business. Your donations serve to further the museum's mission of sharing and preserving the stories of our veterans. To donate, visit mavm.org and click on Donate. The content covered in this podcast is for general informational, historical, and educational purposes only. Discussions about historical events, military service, personal experiences, or sensitive topics are presented for educational and archival purposes. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by the host and/or guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy or endorsement of the Mid-America Veterans Museum. Neither the organization, host, director, nor the guest shall at any time be liable for the content covered, causing offense, distress, or any other reaction.
Welcome to the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum with your host, Jason Galvin and Sergeant Ethan Gross. Well, welcome back, family. We are live from the Mid-America Veterans Museum. And Ethan, I'm very excited to have this guest here tonight. I know you are, so why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Tonight we're speaking to Specialist Phil Wight, United States Army, August 1992 to May of 1996. Here's my first question. Exactly how old are your golf clubs?
My golf clubs? Oh, my golf clubs are quite old.
Tell us about that.
Right. So my grandfather, he was in World War One. He was a cavalry officer in World War One, like 18 years old. And then he was also in World War II. So my golf clubs are my granddad's golf clubs. And so they're some very small wooden golf clubs.
I bet.
Right. And then they were weighted to him. But then when I pull those out next to the other guys with the big iron, drivers, they're like, what the hell is that?
But a story comes out of it.
But a story comes out.
I love it.
Like these golf clubs were and they were used on St. Louis Country Club. So your little, your high-end golf clubs, they've not seen like the original, right?
Yeah.
like the freaking OG of golf clubs, right?
That's awesome.
So I've heard you say this before. Your granddad was really too young for World War I, but too old for World War II, but found a way in both of those conflicts.
Right. So, yeah. So he lived an interesting life. And, so I've got the plaque on my wall or whatever of when him being a 17-year-old captain, 18-year-old major in the cavalry. I always like when I go to the coffin fund, I'm like, our family's been serving in the military since there were horses, right? So,
Was it Scotland? Is you guys from Scotland?
Scotland. So
yeah.
So oh my gosh, Clan Campbell. So these Scottish guys. One of my best memories of my dad was going to the Forest Park and the Scottish Festival, and they do the calling of the clans when the guys would come out of the woods carrying their torches, and there was a fog machine, so fog was going out of the woods, and they'd put it on the bonfire. So I'm like, man, I've got heritage. This is beautiful. Yeah. But then when I went up to the Scottish Festival, I told them I was Clan Campbell, and they said we're nothing but a bunch of vagabonds and horse thieves.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So your granddad was in the RAF in World War II, is that right?
Yeah, so directed fighters and bombers and things like that. I mean, he's got presidential medals from, different presidents and things like that. And might have been CIA, I don't know. We just don't know quite everything, right?
When did he migrate to the United States?
I don't recall that, right? So my dad was Canadian, right? So my dad was Canadian born.
Gotcha.
From what I understand, and if I don't remember my family history, hopefully people forgive me. But anyway, so that's like, and they had a weird, like, I remember there was a plane crash where I lost one of my uncles, and my granddad drove to that plane crash and ran to the plane, and so, Canadian, Canadian.
And your father also served.
Yeah, so my dad was in the Air Force, and So that's also pretty cool. I really didn't know that much about his time.
Yeah.
All I do know is like my favorite story was he was on a motorcycle, and there was a dog, and the dog was chasing his motorcycle. It got caught up in his wheels. He had an accident. He woke up with this beautiful French farm girl.
What a way to wake up.
I know. So he was thinking that she was an angel,
Yeah.
right? And then it was crazy because I found some letters from my granddad to my dad saying that he couldn't marry the French girl, right? That he had to come back home and everything. And so the only one who really kind of supported me a lot when I was getting married to this Panamanian girl was my dad, because my granddad told him he was not going to do the same thing to me, right?
Nice.
So
anyway.
this is kind of interesting to me. So you have this family history, pretty storied family history, but you don't do ROTC in school.
Right.
You don't attend like a military academy. It almost seems like that wasn't quite on your trajectory until all of a sudden it was.
Yeah, that was actually the craziness, is that I wish I would have done ROTC. I went the other way. I went as a grunt,
Sure.
and I went through private college, so spent like $120,000 for private college, and then decided I want to go.
Yeah.
I want to go in the military, right?
You should have had the military pay for that.
I know.
In hindsight.
I don't know what the hell I was thinking of. I would have a big fat bank account instead.
Oh man.
But it was what was I thinking? But yeah, so that was I did it kind of reverse. And
You sort of have a funny recruiter story. Your mom pulled out some
like a pan or something like
some
that.
cookware.
So I actually blame my, like I've always been running through the woods, right?
Yeah.
I've always lived cops and robbers when I was growing up, ding dong ditching, maybe
typical
adventure
Ledoux
stuff. Yeah.
typical like little Ledoux brat. No. But then, and then my dad had me after college. I wasn't really doing what I needed to be doing. I wasn't, I had not found myself, right? And my mom looked at me and goes, I think you got a 50-50 chance of making it. And she's like, not like making it, but 50-50 chance of living, right?
Gosh.
And my dad had me go have dinner with a Navy SEAL officer, and I thought that was pretty cool until he started talking about drum proofing. And then I realized that a couple things. I didn't want to be in the Air Force with one wing spiraling towards the earth on fire. Sorry. That was maybe too soon. Sorry.
Too many Hollywood movies.
My friend right across the street. Yeah. Anyway, I didn't want to be on a ship sinking,
Sure.
trapped on the bottom of a ship. I didn't want to be in a tank being targeted by a missile. Like if I was going to go left when I should have gone right, or if I was going to step on that landmine, it was going to be on me.
Sure. Yeah.
So, but
I like
then,
the thought process. Yeah.
Yeah, and then
So the SEALs wasn't going to be your future.
But yeah, and then so I was supposed to be military intelligence. I was supposed to. I had a linguist. I was going to be a linguist cryptologist, and I had a signing bonus.
That's right. What happened to that exactly?
Yeah, so I had a signing bonus. Like I said, there was a beautiful girl that was from Monterey, California, that I knew from college. I mean, that girl was like Christmas. And then I had a signing bonus. I quit my job, sold my car, and was all ready to go. Walking down to sign the final paperwork to go in as a linguist cryptologist and go the CIA route. I mean, I had it all mapped out.
Yeah.
This airborne ranger officer grabbed me as I'm going down the hall and goes, "Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm going to go sign my paperwork with intelligence." And they're like, "Oh, don't do that. They're going to screw you." I'm like, no. All I got to do is sign the paperwork. And sure enough, I got down there. They saw me. I wrestled. I played football. They were like, "Oh, you're not going to be a linguist cryptologist. You're going to be an interrogator." And so they ripped up my contract in front of me and tried to make me an interrogator. So I walked back to the airborne ranger officer and told him he was right, that they tried to screw me. I already sold my car, quit my job, so I'm like, let's just do this, right? So, yeah.
So then what, were you just 11 bang bang? Is that what you got?
Yeah, 11 bang bang,
Okay.
1 papa. So,
Okay.
started in over in Ranger. I went through basic airborne school, went to RIP, Ranger Indoctrination Program.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the way, everyone and their brother wanted to get kicked out. And then somewhere along the way, one of the riggers at our battalion thought, hey, it would be good to get kicked out of the military so he'd screw up with parachutes.
Oh,
So
wow.
took 550 Corps to a couple parachutes, and about that time, I was like, I don't think I want to be here anymore, right?
Yeah.
And then I loved it. I loved the spirit of the Corps. I loved everything like that, but
Sure.
I didn't love the fact that all of the people around me I was surrounded by jagoffs and wasn't like what I wanted to have happen. So I went to an airborne unit down in Panama.
So let's go through a few of these things step by step. As a fellow paratrooper, I'm interested in this. Tell me about your airborne experience.
It was good. You know, we were the first 508th motigators, so we had our barracks, and our barracks was surrounded by a moat of caiman crocodiles. In the old days, they used to jump them. So you would I've got pictures of them jumping crocodiles or caiman, but then one of them hit the colonel's chute, and he heard something hit his chute, and he looked up, and there's a caiman.
Did you at least sedate them before you jumped with them?
No, they were
wild and thrashing.
But
wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, so there was a reason why they're called the motigators, because they actually. So actually, I told you I grew up in Ladue and super fast. I don't know how long we have, but anyway, so I grew up in Ladue on base for the first night. Okay, so I grew up in Ladue. I watched Platoon probably a couple too many times, right?
Yeah.
Like, how come all the poor kids have to go? Whatever.
Sure.
So I'm out there. I'm in charge of barracks, and this guy comes up to me like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. And goes, "Hey, Wight, all the gators are fighting. We have to go break them up." And I'm like, "What?" And then so we basically got broomsticks, 100-mile-an-hour tape, 550 cord, and we went down there, and we had to separate all the gators. And then we took the one at the bottom, had its arm almost all the way ripped off, and we took it to the base vet, knocked on his door. And then we were like, "Hey, can you come look at our mascot?" And the guy's like, "Bring it on the table." I'm like, "It's not that type of mascot."
He's expecting a bulldog or something.
Right, or something like that. And then he looked in back of this pickup truck, and there's a gator with a arm almost all the way torn off.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So anyway, that was airborne.
That's an experience, man.
Jumping out of planes and helicopters, mapping the earth was cool.
Yeah.
I remember I being in my helicopter with Black Hawk for the first time. And the guy's like, "Hey, have you ever mapped the earth?" I'm like, "What's?" And I didn't even get the whole sentence out. And we were immediately screaming down, mapping the earth, like going through the jungle of a canopy of trees overhead, the river below us, and just a tunnel. And we're just like a video game, just going through this tunnel. So
I'm sure that was an experience. That was awesome.
So air assault, airborne. I always tell people I was bad at Spanish and afraid of heights, so I married a Spanish girl and jumped out of planes and helicopters.
Very nice.
Just to get through those fears.
Yeah, absolutely. Just get it over with, right? Rip off that Band-Aid.
So while we're on the topic of Panama, you got there soon after Operation Just Cause. And so I'm curious about your perspective as to what Panama was like after that operation.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm. I think it was in the kind of like the healing process. Right, because it wasn't like, "Hey, gringo," or there was a lot of gringo, but it wasn't like green go, right? I think a little bit after, like Just Cause had been over. Yeah. There's a bar called My Place, and I think before I got there, but someone threw a hand grenade in there one time or something like that. So there was a little bit of danger still there, and but it was pretty calm. Like the people were beautiful down there. It was good. There was not, obviously the stories in my wife's family. He actually took the people around during that night to, like, he moved some of the military personnel around that night.
Wow.
And I think my wife would say that she was hiding underneath a car or something like that when the bombs were going off and stuff.
It was scary for them.
Yeah. So it is, and it's always like, this was our country, and you guys came in, and you did X, Y, Z, or whatever. But so there's always some of that. But I think overall, I think it was pretty peaceful. People, and like I was there when we turned the canal back over, right?
Yeah.
And then so that's when I was completely happy. And then they turned the canal back over, and my colonel wanted me to go. I was going to officer candidate school at the time. Finally. I was going to like green to gold or whatever.
Sure.
I got my airborne, air assault, EIB.
Yeah.
I was triple stacked and I was ready to go. But then, we turned it back over. So like, okay, we're going to send you through 3rd SOCI, which is Special Operations Southern Command, Special Forces. Been married like 2 weeks. And I'm like, "Sir," I'm like, I cannot go Special Forces. I'm like I remember like Ranger Battalion, and I was like, Man, like if I was single, sure, I would go.
Yeah.
But you're married. My wife was not a military wife. My beeper would go off. I'd have to grab my rucksack and my parachute and go.
There's two stories that
Oh no.
your poor wife, the juxtaposition of these stories, I don't mean to offend her.
Yeah.
But let's start with the story about your wife, and then we'll get to the story.
Oh, okay.
So apparently your wife first knew you as Peppermint.
As Peppermint? Oh,
Tell us about that.
So I always liked bold striped shirts. So like Tommy Hilfiger or whatever.
Yes.
And you
90s.
You guys are old enough to appreciate that.
Oh yeah.
So, but I'm going to digress because one of the shirts, even before Peppermint, there was one. I had one. So there was the president of Panama at the time was called like El Toro was his like nickname, right?
Sure.
And so we're in like there's this big festival. It's like Calle Arriba and Calle Abajo, and there's a big huge festival during Mardi Gras, whatever. Yeah. And he's up on the balcony. I'm the only freaking gringo in the crowd. There's just throngs of people, fireworks and water cannons and all this craziness going on. But little did I know, my Tommy Hilfiger shirt was his colors. And so he's up on his balcony, looks down at this only gringo in the crowd, and I'm wearing his colors, right? But then, but going back to Peppermint, that's where my wife, the first night I met my wife, I'd been a successful night of gambling.
Yeah.
To the point that I got kicked out of the casino because I was writing down numbers trying to figure out how much money I'd won. And then, so then I went down, and one of my wife's friends spotted me, and I guess I was looking at my wife. I'm like, hey, she looks like she's a lawyer. And then her friend was like, hey, I think Peppermint's looking at you. Because I had a red and white Tommy Hilfiger shirt, so I looked like a peppermint stick or something.
That's awesome.
So before we get to the story, I want to piece through this a little bit more with your wife. Because, and you've referenced this before, she was a foreign national.
Right.
So how did that affect your military career? I'll just ask it plainly.
No. It was, didn't affect the military career. Like more like telling my mom and dad that I was going to get married. Oh, hey, by the way, you remember that girl I was talking about? We're actually going to get married. And,
what was the courting process like with your wife?
Yeah, like, well, first of all, it's like I had to tell my mom and dad, but I didn't speak exactly a lot of English, and she didn't speak a lot of Spanish, right?
Yeah.
I guess one of the main things she did was like she would hold on, like when we were walking, she'd hold on to my belt loop. And it's like so small, but that's like one of the things I was like, why is she holding on my belt loop? But that's like one of the fonder memories. But once again, it's about like nature. I've always been a big nature lover. So Panama's a beautiful country. Yeah. You got mountains and volcanoes in the the jungle, and there you got the city, and you got the wealthy and the not so wealthy, and you got the oceans right there. You can hit anything within 30 minutes between mountains.
It's all there.
So, that sounds like Lewis McCord too. You can within an hour you can be at the beach, the mountains, the desert.
On the Fort Lewis was a lot of that too. And so
temperature's different.
Well, the temperature's different, but you can hit all the different
and like
geographical
things.
Panama, it would just rain and just like torrential rain, whereas Fort Lewis just pissed on you a little bit all year long. Like it sucked being infantry. Like I would take infantry in Panama over Fort Lewis.
You knew it was going to come and how hard it was going to be, or what?
Yeah, and then it would dry up and you were done.
But
Fort Lewis would just piss on you for as long as you wanted.
And we're going to get to Fort Lewis in a little bit. The last thing I'm going to ask about your wife, what do you remember about meeting her parents for the first time?
Meeting her parents for the first time. I remember her house, and I remember sitting on the deck with her dad, and I like her dad. I called Superman after a while because like he was just a really good guy, and he was changing a tire on his van, and he got hit by a car, and he got knocked off a bridge, fell several stories down into the surf, and they had to bring a basket and bring him up. But then so I called him Superman. Like that was his nickname after that because he literally flew.
Wow.
No, but then like the biggest thing I remember is going to their house, about family, about food, and about community. There was like all the roosters, like the noises of the roosters and the cars, and these political cars would go by with these speakers, and it'd be like 4:00 in the morning. It's like so there was a craziness, but like once again a tight family, and between the brothers and their sisters and everything else like that, it's like the one thing I loved when there was a major holiday, you would literally go from house to house to house on the street, and these people wouldn't know you, but there's this roaming party on Christmas and New Year's. You just go in these houses and there's food and music.
That's cool.
And dancing, so that was always kind of cool.
So apologies to your wife
all good.
for this being the next story.
Oh,
But tell us the story.
oh, the story. So I was obviously like airborne and airborne infantry, make it even worse. And then people are always like pranking each other,
Sure.
right? And then in a Panama, even though there wasn't an enemy, there was drugs in the area.
Sure.
And there was people who might steal from you, and there's like people might come into your camp, etc. So you never knew. And
Vigilance is important at all
Yeah.
times.
and then
You don't want marauders getting you.
no, and then so you just never know. But I remember on this night we had been breaking brush, which is basically you're just hacking your way through, and it's just tiresome. We were going uphill to this very top point, and like, why are we going here? Because like you want the enemy, you want to be able to hear the enemy if the enemy's coming
Sure.
at you, right? So we're breaking brush to the most impossible place to actually stop, and then it's like 3:00 in the morning, right? And as infantry, you would, shave and cream each other. You'd tie people to trees. You'd steal their weapons. You would just prank each other relentlessly,
You
right?
kidnapped an officer at some point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
We ended up doing
dangerous
that.
business.
We ended up tying people to trees and whatever. And there were always these things where you had an hour, like PT, and you had an hour where you could do anything to one of your NCOs, right? If you caught them, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, but I digress. So anyway, so I'm sleeping there at night. It's like 3:00 in the morning, and I could feel someone like cupping my mouth, right? And I have like their hands over my mouth, and I'm like, is this friend or foe? Am I gonna knife them? No, I'm not gonna knife them. Am I gonna hit them in the groin? I'll probably hit them in the groin. I'll probably toss them.
Yeah.
Like I don't know why they're screwing with me, and so like I don't think someone's screwing with me. It's got to be someone who just doesn't know, right?
Yeah.
But then I realized something was wrong because I could feel pressure on one cheek, pressure on my other cheek, pressure underneath my chin, and pressure on top of my head. And I'm like, this is
bigger than the grip of a hand.
This is the bigger than the grip of hand. I'm like, okay, I'm surely sleeping. This is some type of weird dream, and so it's not, But then about that time, I felt something like inside my mouth, and so whatever it was like gripping my tongue. And pulling on my tongue. And meanwhile, it's all spread over my face and gripping my tongue, and
like alien style.
yeah,
basically.
like alien, totally, man.
Oh my God!
And like that's where I thought I was obviously like dreaming.
Yeah.
But then it was real, and then I realized what had happened was a jungle tarantula had crawled up on my face, and then so it had
mistook your tongue.
Yeah, it thought my tongue was a nice big juicy slug, and so it was pulling my tongue out of my mouth, and I'm like, I can't yell because they'll bite me and then I'll die, because by the time a helicopter gets in here, I would die. Can't move, it would get scared and it would bite me and I'd die. Can't call for help, it would bite me, I'd die. And everything I thought of was that like it would bite me and I'd die. So I was like, okay, the only thing left to do was I had to bite it first. So I like bit through its hairy crab-like midsection, and it popped and pussed and like burst into everything, and then I just basically turned and spat it out.
This is the stuff of
that is awesome.
It's like nightmarish to me.
It was no.
That is
this
freaking
like,
awesome.
But as soon as I bit into it, it was so scared, because I was like popping.
It wasn't
and crunching.
expecting a reaction,
and so it released like a spring trap, which was
Yeah.
perfect because then I could just spit it into
Yeah.
the bushes. And then I woke up and I packed up all my gear, went to the guard on duty, and like, don't worry, I got the rest of the night, So I was.
You need a T-shirt for that, with a tarantula bitten in half that says
No.
"Bite me."
Well, there's this thing called 3F, which is faith, fitness, and fellowship, right? And so I went to a 3F, and when you go there, it's a lot like the military. They don't use your name; you get a nickname.
Yeah.
And so my nickname was Spider Bite.
That's great.
That is great.
So since I knew that story, I was looking up. I don't know if you know, but I'm wondering if that was the Panama Blonde, which is such a nice name for a spider.
Oh,
But
man.
that's one of the most common tarantulas there.
Well,
in
I was
Panama.
surely hoping if it was tonguing me that was blonde, right?
There you go.
Nice.
I don't know. There were a lot of Panama blonde. But that's
like I said, apologies to your wife that these stories were next to each other.
Oh my God.
Well, hey, I might have gotten out of the timeline a little bit. So
Right.
Fort Lewis was before Panama?
No, Fort Lewis is after.
Oh, it was after.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
okay.
basically, after we deactivated, and this was crazy, but after we deactivated, we went up to Fort Lewis, and that was one of my wife's favorite trips. Was navigating from where I live, St. Louis, all the way up to Fort Lewis, because the military would only let you drive like 6 hours a day. So we took 5 days to get up there, saw all everything up there. But
What'd you do? Like go to the Badlands?
yeah,
and
the Badlands, Grand
Black
Canyon,
Hills,
with the like Devil's Tower,
Yeah.
Sure.
and like Mount Rushmore, I think.
Yeah,
And
Mount Rushmore. Yep.
We saw like buffalo. And
I've done that trip 2 or 3 times.
Dude, like I remember just seeing a buffalo, and I just put the car into a lock. I locked it up. I'm like, buffalo, and I'm like, I was making just the biggest scene out of the buffalo. But yeah, so then we were the Manchus, and that was cool because we had the BDU, we had the dreadlock, the dreadlock BDUs. That was so you rip up your BDUs, you make dreadlocks on your helmet to like ruin your silhouette or whatever.
Sure.
And that was badass. We would like show up, everyone nice, be clean cut, and then we'd show up in our freaking dreadlock BDUs. And then we became the first of the 24th Infantry Regiment, and we had to get rid of our dreadlocks. So that was
A little bit more
horrible.
clean cut.
How long were you at Lewis McChord for?
I was there up 2 years, and probably the biggest difference was down in Panama. We were just a little sister battalion of the 82nd, and you know, we the coolest thing stuff was jumping air assault and blowing stuff up, right? And we had demo teams that came down and would teach us demo. But when we got up to Fort Lewis, it's cool because we had the A-10 Warthogs,
Sure.
and then we had the M1 Abrams. So that was fun with using both of those in kind of combined combat.
Sounds like fun.
Now, you were an M60 gunner.
Right. So as an M60 gunner,
And as you may know, that's been replaced by the M240 now.
the
Modern.
saw.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that seem like an equivalent weapon system?
No, because we actually had the saw or the M240 at the same time as the 60 gunner. I remember being on an objective, and there was a saw gunner who was walking his fire in front of me and trying to be like high speed and splintering this bunker in front of me, and sandbags were like just blowing up in front of me because this saw gunner thought he was being like high speed.
Yeah.
And it didn't realize I had a 60, like I was a 60 gunner. So I'm like, okay, you want to walk fire? I could walk fire. And so I proceeded to spray a bunch of M60 bullets, which are a lot bigger, over in front of him. And he quickly lifted his fire.
That's
well,
awesome.
hey, wait, one second. This is not scripted, but I got to tell you anyway. So Louisiana swamp phase. We're in swamp phase. I'm in the front. I'm guiding all these people through, and I kept telling them I'm going to speed up. I kept telling them that the water's getting deeper and deeper and deeper, right?
Yeah.
So they told me to stay on azimuth. So I got 240 people behind me, and we're going through swamp phase. And so I'm like, you want to go straight? We're going to go straight. Like shoulder deep water. And then it was about that time that I came up on an alligator hole.
Yeah, man.
And so I put my hand in there, switched it around, nothing grabbed my hand. So I like went in the alligator. So I went in and out of like 3 alligator holes, right? So we're
brave, man.
We're on, and then I got 240 people behind me, right? And then so I get up on the last alligator hole, and I was pretty confident by this time that they all had like scooted out.
Yeah.
And I go up there, and mind you, I'm like 200, probably 230. I probably got 100 pounds of gear on me.
Sure.
I've got my M60, which is probably another 40 pounds or whatever.
Yeah.
And as I come up to this last hole, I step, and then bubbles just started surging all around me. And I could feel like all 300, 400 pounds of me was being lifted out of the water.
Oh, wow.
And I could feel these scales like in between my legs, right? And so I said, God, I am not going to go down by an alligator if I have a fully loaded M60.
I'm going to use
like I'm gonna pray and spray or spray and pray. And right as I was like locking into fully loaded, and like pointing my muzzle down, and I'm like, I'm gonna get in all sorts of trouble, but at least I'm gonna shoot this alligator, right? And then this huge sunken log came up.
Oh, how about that?
And then I was like, holy shit. But anyway, so after we got out of there, the Rangers who were guiding us, and they're like, the Ranger cadre was like, we've been doing this for like 10 years, and that's the first group to ever walk straight through the swamp. Like most people would go around, and that's exactly what I was trying to do the whole time.
That's not the airborne way.
No, we go straight freaking through.
That's awesome.
Okay, so Panama, you have your experience at Panama, you have your experience at Fort Lewis. You referenced it earlier. Part of the reason you decide to get out is family, wife,
right.
and want to get back to normal life.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about making that decision and if it was hard.
Right. So I think that there was a point probably up in Fort Lewis where, like, oh, hey, I want to get out or whatever, you're kind of going through it. Because like I left, like you're either going to make a career out of it or you're not going to make a career out of it. Right. So, and then when you realize you're not making it, like when I wasn't going through OCS anymore, I wasn't going to officer can school. I did all the training for that. Yeah. But then like I elected when my unit deactivated, I'm just gonna come back and I'm gonna do 2 years and get out. Sure. Right. So that sucked because I was supposed to be an officer the whole freaking time. Right. Yeah. And that was just like, and I knew that I was going to go in a combat field, and I had to be led before I could lead, right? Yeah. And you get the triple stack, you get the Ranger tab, and then you're off to the races, right?
Well, so this is it's a good lead in,
right?
I've heard you say before in a previous interview that if you could go back, and this is something we don't hear very often, so I appreciate your honesty.
Yeah.
You would change it if you could go back. You would do ROTC.
Right.
You would enter as an officer, and heck, you might have even stayed in for 20 years.
Right. So I think that there's a lot of people who serve 20 in the military, and they get out and they do another 20 in the private sector. Sure. And then they've got a double pension, and they might have gone in when they're 20. Yeah. And then so when they're 60, they basically have a double retirement, right? Yeah. So
financially, it's smart.
Yeah, so financially smart. I've met several people who have done it, but I think that like being away from your family that long,
there's a toll.
I mean, there's always a freaking toll,
especially in a deployable unit.
Yeah. And then with like kids, like even when I got back out, I want to go in the FBI, but could I have that follow me home, right? And you have a young family, and you're like, and if you stir the pot. And you do different things. You put different people down than those people. Like it's easy when you're in Afghanistan or Iraq. When you're back home, there's little to no odds of it following you home, right? It can follow you home in a lot of other ways, right? Yeah. But if you're dealing with bad guys here, or even bad guys in Mexico or whatever, and you find and they will come back for you, right? And that's just a risk you always run.
There's a whole flurry of questions I want to ask you about post-military life, and this one's going to lead into post-military life. The story about your wife, you referenced it just briefly, that you'd gone to the casino. Uh-huh. What I've heard as part of that story before from you is many times after the duty day, you just kind of wanted to get away from it all, and so you go to the casino or you go to a discotheque or whatever. Right. You go out on the town. That's interesting to me because you've also mentioned in a previous interview, that you haven't kept up with any of your fellow soldiers from that time.
No.
So I'm just curious, was it a personality thing? Was it just kind of fed up with these people thing?
No.
What kept you from, I guess, maintaining strongly bonding?
Yeah. So I think it's like distance, right? And, like that's really the hardest thing. That for people getting out of the military is you wake up one day and you don't have a platoon anymore, right? So, like my guys were down in Panama, they were up in Fort Lewis or in different states, so that makes it incredibly hard to like keep in touch.
Sure.
And that's like just the main break. You've got a company of like 120, 130 people that you basically, you lived with, you've eaten with, you played with, you've got fights with and all this jazz. And then one day you're not there anymore. Right.
And the
And
technology wasn't the same back then as it is now.
Yeah.
So it's
And
harder
then-
to stay up with people.
Yeah.
harder, and every once in a while, like, like if you say motigator or like helicopters and gators, and they're like, oh, dude, I was a motigator, and then you connect and you
Yeah.
like share pictures and like, shit, that actually did happen that way. It wasn't, and then I could share with my kids, like, look, I said I jumped out with the gators, like, here's the gator and here's the here's the airplane, and this is us carrying a gator to the airplane or whatever. So
this is interesting. This leads to my next question. I'm not great at math, so let me do some quick math. About 20 years, if I'm remembering correctly. For about 20 years, it almost seems like you disassociate from your military career.
Right.
You don't have any apparel.
Right.
You don't attend any sort of community events for veterans. And all of a sudden you attend an event at the Jewish Community Center and it clicks.
Right. I think that's like that's kind of like the strangest thing is like I think when I got out, maybe like a VFW, right?
Sure.
I think I might have walked into VFW or Legion Hall or whatever. You like the American Legion, like a veteran of a foreign war. Well, I wasn't a veteran of a foreign war, right?
Yeah.
And and then so you don't feel like you click with the other veterans, right?
Yeah.
So
you were looking for connection soon after you got out. You just couldn't find it.
and then it just got easier and easier to just kind of like fade into the woodwork.
That's interesting. That's interesting.
And then so it just got easier and easier. And then, as you said, I was at the Jewish Community Center, and I saw these World War II guy hats with guys with their hats and their medals and everything. And I'm like, dude, like, what is my damage, right? And I was like, I didn't have any military, like I didn't have an Army Strong shirt, didn't have an Army Strong hat, like nothing. Didn't attend any veteran events, and it's not rare because I've met Vietnam War veterans who I brought out to an event, and they're like, Phil, this is the first time I've ever been to a veteran event. I suddenly realized like here's these guys bonding, like different guys bonding, World War II guys bonding together who had friends who used to serve, and maybe they didn't serve with each other, but they shared a common thing.
Yeah.
So then I'm like, okay, these guys are dying. Like, and I would see it in Knights of Columbus. You see it everywhere. Like, there's these older guys who are dying, and like you expect someone else to pick up the torch, right? Yeah. And like the other people who are going to pick up the torch is you, right? So, like we mentioned, Coffee Talk. I'll go to Coffee Talk. There's 150 people there.
Yeah.
The median age is probably 60 or 70 years old. There's no one like me. So you got 150 veterans, and I'm the only one that's 50-something there. There might be 5-6 guys, right? But
I'm glad you. I hope you don't mind me getting into this topic with you. I think you're going to have an interesting perspective. There's something I've heard before. I'm sure Jason has heard of this as well. And you said it, VFW. We'll just use that as an example of veterans of foreign wars. I think for especially veterans from my generation, a VFW comes off as sort of an old smoky bar where all the old farts hang out.
Right.
And it's not exactly welcoming for especially post 9/11 veterans.
Right. So you guys basically have, and I love all the VFWs out there. So don't get me wrong. And I love all the old cranky veterans who smoke and drink and like all that stuff, right? So, but it wasn't my vibe, right? Yeah. And so actually had a guy from St. Louis Prairie, Tom Cummings, invited me over to the Ladue Elks. And so like the Ladue Elks was like the happy medium. There was like volleyball and there was a pool. Sure. And the drinks were cheap, and there was like the Veiled Prophet, so it was like kind of elite St. Louis, and there's Prairie guys there from my high school, so I felt like I like belonged. And then there was this really cool like veteran niche there, and so I think that was really my kind of happy medium. So I think what I was talking to you before, like I like the first thing I turned 50 as a midlife crisis. Probably I bought a Jeep. I had that conversation with those World War II guys. I think I bought a Jeep shortly after that. Yeah. And then I joined Christian Off-Road Association. I'm like, hey, I've got a Jeep. I should join a Jeep club. And that's the first Jeep club. I'm like, okay, it's faith-based and Jeeps. I think I could dig that. The first meeting, I walked out of there, and there was a guy with a Patriot Guard Jeep there. and he had like a Templar Knight on his license plate. And I saw the Patriot Guard decal. I'm like, hey, what's that? And he's like, dude, that's like he told me what it was. I'm like, what do you have to do to like join it? You know, have to be like a special veteran or whatever. And he's like, no, dude, you just go and sign up online. and then he had his leather jacket, his leather biker jacket, you know, with all his medals and his unit and everything like that. I'm like, man, that fucking jacket, sorry, language, that jacket is badass, you know. And it's like, oh, we can go down to Chuck's Boots. I'll buy one with you tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, my wife would freaking kill me. You know, here I'm at, like, Oadu guy, and I'm going to go buy a biker jacket, you know. But sure enough, the next day, we bought that biker jacket, and we started putting decals and stuff on it. Yeah. And that was cool. And then that just led to getting involved with the Coffin Fund, Folds of Honor, Dogs for Our Brave. And it just, like, because then I had a Jeep, I had my biker jacket, I went to a veteran concert, and that is where I met Gunner. So and then it all just blossomed. It all just blossomed from there.
I want to hear the Gunner story, but one thing I want to say before we get into that, I just want to say, from my perspective as a younger vet, Phil, I want to really commend you because, and you said jokingly a midlife crisis. I think your story is a great representation that it's never too late to find your community.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's never too late to find your niche in life.
Right.
For sure.
I really appreciate that you had that experience, and I really appreciate you talking about it so openly with us.
Yeah. No, it is super important in, like, you know, we all go through stuff, right?
Yeah.
And I think finding that community is good. Like my dad did like St. Vincent de Paul, right?
Sure.
And I think my dad was in a bad spot, maybe, you know, just with work and being early retired and everything, and just needed to find purpose, right? And so that, like, saved my dad, right? And I just knew that, you know, getting involved in different stuff like that was, like, just a way of not only, like, giving back to the community, but then also finding that camaraderie, you know, because, like, there's not, you know, sometimes there's not camaraderie in the normal world, right? And so I think that was...
well, and also, this is something that several guests of ours have expressed to us, and it sounds like that's what you're alluding to. There's a certain understanding that veterans have that no one else will understand.
Right. And I think that, like, and I'll express this time and time again, was that I think for me to meet veterans, I had to meet them on like a common playing field, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that one of the things that really kind of spring-loaded that whole thing was, like, car shows. Like, I think, like, Patriot Guard, because you're standing shoulder to shoulder with the guy and you're just shooting the shit. And, like, you know, like, Patriot Guard was great to meet veterans. But I think when I started doing car shows and stuff like that, I think that was, and then Gunner was immediate, like, bond for a lot of, you know, people come up, oh my God, your dog's awesome, you know? And, like, if it wasn't for Gunner and it wasn't for car shows or some type of commonality, like, we wouldn't talk to each other. Right?
It's a great conversation starter.
Right? Yeah. So I think that, you know, having that, like, something in common, where it's like the Elks Lodge, right? I got the Elks Lodge and there's like 30 veterans, but they've got something in common, right? Yeah. And then when you start doing that, you realize it's easier and easier and easier. So my favorite story of here was, I want to say Bud.
Bud Haedike.
Yeah.
I interviewed him twice on this podcast.
Bud was a great guy, and he was, you know, a B-17 bomber pilot. I think he did, was it the 20 combat missions?
Something like that.
Yeah, he recorded every single one of them too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I remember being up at the diner, Bishop's Post Diner.
Sure.
And I had set my laptop up, and I was fully intended to do about 2 hours of work, right?
Yeah.
And I went to the restroom, came back, and there was an older gentleman who had a World War II hat on. It was like, it's the Air Force.
Yeah.
And I remember just sniping him as I went by. I'm like, oh, Air Force guy, huh? And then I was like, and I kept walking, and then he says, not just Air Force, B-17 bomber pilot.
Yeah.
And so immediately I turned back, and I'm like, and I started talking to him, and we sat down. I'm like, can I sit with you? He's like, sure. And we sat down, and my food was way over there, and my computer was way over there, and this was not what I was supposed to be doing. But at that time, this is what, like,
you felt called to do.
God intended me to do. Yeah. So I sat down, with Bud, and we talked forever, right? And he actually at one point during our conversation, he was like, "Hey, can I sing you a song?"
Was it the song he wrote?
Yeah, the song he wrote, and I'm like, okay. And then he like make it matters worse. He stood up and he started singing the song in the middle of Bishop's.
He was proud of that song, man.
Dude, yeah. So
he was. Have you seen it in the movie?
I'm not sure if I've seen the movie or not. But so the cool thing about Bud, I think this was just after COVID or like around COVID or whatever. Bud had lost contact with the veteran community. He was not getting out with the veteran community. He had lost contact. His daughter was worried. And then I remember getting Bud involved with Folds of Honor, Tim Maxwell, Folds of Honor. We went down to Cotterville, our Defiance parades, got him in like front and center, and got his story out there a couple of different times. So, that's just
amazing.
Yeah. So
anyway, he was an amazing man.
So that's where the commonality, or just like where it gets easier, where you see a veteran with a hat on. I remember I was at a different restaurant. I think it was Cracker Barrel, and I saw a guy with a sniper hat, and I'm like, and he was standing with his wife, and I'm like, I gotta hear that guy's story, right?
Yeah.
And so I like sniped him again. I'm like, sniper, or something like that. And he goes like, not just a sniper. I was the President Roosevelt's sniper. He was a presidential sniper. So he lived in the White House with his wife.
Wow.
And they were presidential snipers. So
it's funny you say that because, like on Veterans Day,
right,
every restaurant has some sort of deal or discount.
Yep.
And I love to go in, like Applebee's is really popular around here.
Hooters
love to go
for
in.
me.
Hooters.
I'm not gonna lie.
I'll have to remember that.
There's no blonde Panamanians there.
but I love going into those restaurants on Veterans Day specifically because they're just packed with veterans.
Right.
And the thing I wanted to relate this to is, for our audience out there, even if you're not a veteran, even if you don't understand the military history or community, that's okay. Just know that if someone's wearing their branch on their hat, shirt, jacket, whatever, they want to be asked about it.
Yeah, it is. It's seriously an open invitation, right? And even so, like my wife gets mad at me because I'm a financial planner, and I have a suit, my suit jacket. I have Ladue Elks. I have an airborne medal.
Yeah.
I have a STL Heroes Network medal.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I can't put any more medals on that side. I'll put some medals over here. But it is an open invitation.
Yeah.
Hey, you're an elk. I'm an elk. You were airborne. I was airborne, right?
Yeah.
And so at that instant, people are looking for connectivity, a connection.
Yeah, exactly.
And if you're just a stranger on the street, and there's if those guys weren't wearing their World War II hats, would have never talked to them.
You never know.
I would never talked to them. I would never had that conversation. I would never bought my Jeep. I would never found my dog. And
well, I'm glad you're saying that, Phil, because I think as a veteran adjacent person, not a veteran himself, I've heard a lot of people tell me, "Hey, I'm kind of cautious or afraid to go up to somebody because I'm afraid I might, make them feel something they don't want to feel." But what I'm hearing from you guys is they do want you to approach them and ask them about it.
That's been my experience, Phil.
There are some people who don't want to talk about it. You see that in the movie sometimes. I think it's all
about the way you approach that individual.
Exactly.
You don't want to go in saying, "How many people did you kill?"
Right.
That's the wrong way to do it.
Well, you could ask them to tell me about your service or what unit you were in.
Kind of like a good example of this. People's National Bank is my event sponsor, and so they're doing great things in the community and everything else like that. The president of People's National Bank is actually a veteran. I asked his people, "Have you ever seen a military picture of him?" And they're like, "We have never seen a military picture of him." So I'm doing my event, and I'm like, "Get me a military picture of him," right? And because he has a story, and he has a story to tell, and nobody's asking him that story. So one of the things I like about you guys is, and this is true, that I heard people say that you die twice. You die when you physically die, and then you die when nobody else is saying your name anymore.
Sure.
Yep.
And so that's where I'm like, this is important. I want you to get. I still haven't gotten that picture, but I'm not done yet, right?
You'll get it. I'm sure.
You guys are sending me a bunch of pictures. I'm gonna be like, look wouldn't it be nice if like his picture was included in all this? So
since you referenced Gunner, and Gunner plays such an important role in your life now and has for I think the past 9 years or so.
It's like 6 years.
6 years. Tell us about meeting Gunner for the first time.
Right. So I think that was like kind of like I said, I was in that point of where I was trying to find myself. Right.
Yeah.
You're like, hey, I'm going down this road, and you're going up and just trying to talk to people. Right.
Yeah.
Like you can probably you would never know with me, as I had a massive stuttering problem when I was growing up. Right. And so to beat that, I just talk to people. Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, and if I get stressed out, I still do it now. But anyway, so when I met Gunner, I was sponsoring a veteran event. It was a veteran concert.
Is this Freedom Jam?
No, this was just some other little rinky-dink thing. I forget what it's about even. But I was there, and there weren't a lot of people there. Like, the bands were awesome. The bands were freaking cool. But there was, like, maybe 50 people, like, in between the vendors and whatever. So I got bored, and I was walking around. And Dogs on Duty was over there, and I went by their place, and there was this huge, mangy mongrel underneath their table. And he was kind of, like, in the shadows, too. And he's already dark, but he's in the shadows. And I could just tell that there was a beast down there of some sort. And I go up to him, and I go, like, who is that big mangy mongrel underneath your table? And the lady's like, that's Gunner. And I'm like, well, I got something in common. I used to be a gunner, so we got something in common. And then the lady's like, I train police dogs and I train service dogs. I have no need for a clinging therapy dog. And I'm like, and then so I did what everyone else does. I looked at him, walked away, came back, said, can I take a picture? Took a picture, walked away back. Can I pet him? Okay, I could pet him. Walked away, came back. I want to know more of his story, whatever, right? Yeah. And then about 3 months later, I was at another veteran event, and that was actually when I met the Vietnam guy who's never been to a veteran event. And I was like, I think I was looking at online. I'm like, holy cow, they actually are trying to find someone to adopt Gunner. Yeah. And I went there, and there was 100 people in front of me, and I'm like, I've got all these people have dogs already, and look at my backyard. I've got a nice fence. Look at my farm. I just started bombarding this lady with different pictures, and then. So I think finally, 4th of July weekend, I took Gunner for the first time, watched the fireworks, went out to my farm, went out to St. Charles, took all over the place with Gunner. But it sucked because come Monday or whatever, it was like turning back a rental car. I'm like, hey, here's your dog back. And, it was like I didn't know if I was going to get him or not get him. There were people in front of me. And then, about 3 days later, she said I got him. So
that was like a trial program that you had.
Yeah, it was like a trial program. Like take it out, see what it's like. Tell us. And I bombarded her. I'm like, look at all these pictures I took of Gunner, right?
You were already bonding with him.
Yeah, I was already bonding with him. And she knew that, I didn't have young kids, so nobody to Gunner to bowl over.
It was a good fit.
So it was a good fit. She knew I would get him out. So
tell us... Jason and I are both dog lovers.
Right.
I won't mention that I also have 2 cats, but I do love dogs. So tell us one story that you find really encapsulates how Gunner has changed your life.
Oh, that's there's some pretty tragic stories, and there's all, but I think, man, there's not one story, right? I think that and then you start to go back to hey, who saved who or whatever, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I think that Gunner has been. It's he's easy no matter what type of mood I'm in or whatever. I could go out in the public and people will come over and say hi to Gunner and to get their pictures taken. And so that being able to bond with other people through Gunner has probably been the best thing. I think that it drives my wife crazy and. And I've got thousands. Gunner's easily the most photographed dog here in St. Louis. Gunner's just made it easy talking with everyone, sharing a story about military or sharing whatever, bonding with other veterans, giving back to community because it got me involved in everything. It was just that much easier. It was sometimes I'm going to an event, I need a wing person, right?
Sure.
And so, then like my friends, and if you see me on Facebook, you'll be like, yeah, Phil definitely has a lot of wing people he likes to hang out with. But more importantly, like Gunner's the one that doesn't get me in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Because he's just a dog. But yeah, so he has a therapy dog, so that's where I go out to schools and hospitals and nursing homes and veteran groups, and so like you help other people, and that's why you help yourself, right?
So
Thank you for sharing that too.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that for sure. This leads really well, and I could be wrong,
Right.
but was Gunner part of your journey to reaching out to the VA?
Probably, like Gardner was good, and so there's different things that like go on, and you're dealing with different things, and like I had mentioned that hey, let's like broach that conversation, like talk about the VA, right?
Yeah.
Because it's always been kind of like in the veteran world, same as like I was 50 years old and didn't do anything for veterans, and like all that's taboo, and like God forbid we talk about the VA, and I've heard all sorts of horror stories about the VA, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so I think at one point, we all go through stuff and everything else like that. Even people who are not veterans, right? But more so veterans, right? And so you're going through these different things and thinking about things, and then you're like, I think at one point I was feeling kind of low, and I'd always heard about 988, which is basically the suicide helpline. And I was like, I think one day I was like thinking about it, and I was like, fuck it, I'm just gonna call, right? I'm like, so like, I've actually had other veterans have a hard time, and like, and you want to help those guys, you don't know where to direct them, whatever. And it's about, hey, like it's easy stuff for like the coffin fund for dental. If you need medical, you could go here, you could go here.
Sure.
But for straight up, like I'm standing in a car with a gun, right? And and so you don't, so anyway, so I wasn't in a car with a gun, but, there have been times or whatever. And then so I'm like, screw it, I'm going to reach out, I'm going to do this 988 thing, because I figured if you talk about it, if you address it, if you hit it head on, if you take away the fantasy or the whatever, whatever goes through people's heads, like, hey, like, man, it would be a lot better if I wasn't here, right? And so anyway, so I ended up calling them. It was a really freak thing, because I think I was going to like an appointment. I was going to this really big appointment for like financial planning or whatever, and I was just like having a drive and just thinking about stuff and about life and things like that. I'm like, okay, I'm freaking gonna call them. And then so I ended up calling them, and it was a good call. We like talked about different stuff, and I don't know if it actually resolved anything at that time, but I was glad that I made the call, right? I think shortly after that, I talked to my family, I talked to my kids, whatever. I took the guns out of my house, and I'm like, that's like, I always had a rule, like after I came out of the military, there were no guns, right? There were no guns in my house, because I didn't want to hurt someone else. I didn't want to hurt myself.
Sure.
Right? And especially with kids and everything else like that. But like one of my sons, he like when he graduated from college, I think I bought him a shotgun. He kept the shotgun at my house. I'm like, son of a gun. What don't you understand about no guns?
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then during COVID, my youngest was like, hey, Dad, we need a gun just in case. And I'm like, oh, like hunting for food, going out to the farm. Like, okay, I can kind of understand this. I'm like, okay. He goes, like, one of my friends has a gun, and he wants us to just have an extra gun. And I'm like, okay. So he brings home this, like, AR-15. And I'm like, okay, this thing is kind of cool. And then I'm like, all right. I'm like, I'll go out to the farm, and I'll shoot it. And I got attached to that AR-15, right?
Yeah.
But, but there was, like, one thing, like, I knew that thing was right there, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so then so I got that away, and I got with the VA, and I started going through like even like prescriptions, like simple stuff, like, hey, I need prescriptions, like that was easy. I engaged with some forms of physical therapy for like one of my knees, and that was good. But then I had a counselor, so Health at Home or something like that. And so I started engaging with that lady. It was a counselor. That was good. That helped out a lot. There's another program, Strength at Home, which dealt with anger management, which we actually have to keep it light. So there's one time was Strength at Home deals with anger management, right, and different things, and like a really good program because it helps a lot of different veterans, and like it also helps me understand where I don't want to be, right?
Sure.
A lot of these guys have been assigned to the program because they've been arrested, or they've gone through a divorce, or they don't have custody of their kids anymore, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. They're on their 5th marriage, whatever. So anyway, I'm rushing back home to get on this Strength at Home call. And I get on the call. I've been rushing all day long. I get on the call right as I'm supposed to get on the call. My phone dies.
Oh, man.
And I was like, what the? And it was just like this tirade of like vulgar language and cursing and like ethnic slurs and like everything you could possibly imagine. Like it was just going off, right? Because my phone was dead, right? Yeah. Well, I actually had earbuds in, and so and then everyone else is on that call. So there's like 10 or 12 people on that call, and I hear this voice in my earbud long after my phone's dead, like, Phil, are you okay? And then it basically shuts off, right? So I recharge my phone. I get back on the call, and I'm like, guys, I'm sorry about that. Like, I was just pissed off, and I'm like, and I joked. It was an awesome like glove save, because I'm like, well, I guess we all know why I'm doing this now. But yeah, just to kind of go back, like, I'm glad I did it. I'm glad I engaged. Yeah. Which was crazy. I actually did my first meditation and hypnosis meeting this last week. And I'm not going to be hypnotized. There's no freaking way, But there's twice, which I don't know if I fell asleep or I was hypnotized. I still don't know. But it was cool. It was a good group. And so there's different things I'm trying out. Yeah. Just to explore like what like melds with me. And then also just being around some other veterans who might be going through the same thing. So,
if you don't mind, Phil, because I think, first of all, Jason and I really appreciate you being so vulnerable with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Phil.
I don't want to just thank you for the story and move on.
Right.
If you're willing to, what I'm really curious to hear about is those moments in time between considering doing something life-changing,
right,
or in this case, life-ending, and making that phone call. How did you bridge that gap?
I think it was like, probably like not probably, for sure, was like, like the biggest thing is like, this isn't going to be my legacy, right?
Gotcha.
And it's like, yeah, things might be tough, might not be where you want them to be. It might be easier if you weren't here anymore, but then you like how many people have it far, far worse than you do? You're like
perspective,
like quit being a frickin' wimp or whatever, but it's okay to have those thoughts, right? Yeah. It's like, we all go through that. I think if you asked anyone to be real, like in the world, I'm not even with veterans, I'd probably be like 60% of the world has thought about it at least once, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Like, even if like I'm driving down the road, I see a light pole on the side of the road or something like that, whatever, right?
Yep. You're 100% right, man. And I'll jump in here too, Phil, because I think that it matters. A couple years ago, man, I thought I was having a heart attack. So told my wife, call 911. Well, I was having a panic attack.
Right.
And I'd never had one before. I didn't know what it was like. I was always opposed to getting counseling, having any type of medication to help me out in the stressors of life and in the time frame of life that I'm in. And, man, I tell you what, going to counseling, getting on some medication changed my life. Right. And so I want people to know there's no problem reaching out for help.
Well, yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that too, because a lot of people, like I tell people I've got 10 little sisters right now, and each of them's going through something, right? There's one that had a baby in the front seat, and she had a gun in the back seat, and she was, and then there's these different things that like impact us. And you talked about medication, like I've got ADHD, and it is a blessing and a curse all at the same time. I'm constantly thrill seeking and dealing with depression, or finally I went back on the Adderall for the ADHD, and I tell people I'm on a couple uppers, a couple downers, and whatever, but does it help, or is it just a mind thing or whatever? But probably the biggest thing is just talking about it, right?
Right, exactly.
And then I have to re-engage the VA on a couple things. I missed a couple appointments. I was supposed to be doing some stuff, and it's like weeks were just passing and passing. And I wasn't doing what I was supposed to be doing that I told her I was going to do. It was this accountability coach, and then I missed it once. And so I have to go through my healthy vet and figure out which ones I missed and then re-engage, But, it is like that demon that like lurks in the corner. If you let it lurk in the corner, then it's just always going to be there. And if it catches you in the wrong mood or whatever, then you could do something stupid, right?
You're right, Phil. You're right.
And the biggest thing is like you can't think about yourself. You have to think about your like legacy, and then like tomorrow's a new day, whatever. And I think that's like the biggest thing is that
there's a ripple effect.
Those same emotions have not been present where that they were before, and it's like, and you're also kind of flirt with it, like sometimes you like, but then that's not like, you just have to deal with it and you move on, and you realize that that's not my legacy, and that's where this ripple effect, like, hey, if I wasn't here, like, well, hey, if I wasn't here and it's because I did something really stupid, then what would happen to the people I know?
Right.
And then, like, I have a friend who's lost almost her whole family to suicide, because, like, one person did it and the other person did it and another person did it. And so, like, man, that's not the ripple effect you want to leave. And, and then I can't say, because like some people do it because they're in pain or whatever, or they don't want to, so you never know, but there's other people going through it. And the biggest thing is reaching out for help. I think is key, because then and then that's why we're doing this, so we can share the story. Right.
Exactly.
And we'd be like, yeah, like freaking, I know it's what it feels like. You don't have a platoon anymore. So freaking get off your ass and go find a platoon.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's a freaking platoon all the way out there. And there's these guys who want to share stories and are just like you, and guys and women, and like people have been abused, and people have been whatever, like you're not alone, right? Statistically speaking, whatever you've gone through, other people have gone through. And if you think you're bad, like look at that guy with no legs, like making it work.
Sure.
Right? Look at those people who are in far worse condition than you are, and quit being a ninny. Yeah. Right?
They're finding ways to still have hope.
Right. And then
you should too.
Yeah, and that's and so same as you were talking about, like medication and stuff like that. And I think the biggest thing, which was weird, was like engaging the VA made me feel weak, right? And I think I actually had a friend say, you know what, it's not making you weak, it's making you strong.
Yeah.
Because like it takes a strong person to realize that they're weak, which is a weird way of thinking, but
no, but it's true, man.
But then the other thing on that same token, it's like, I always tell people that there's two things that you can control, right? You can control if you go to church, you can control if you go to the gym. Like everything else is just influencing you. Like you can't control people, right? You can't control your family. You can't control any of your boss, your siblings, whatever. So like the biggest thing is if I'm going to the gym on a regular basis, I'm feeling good.
Sure.
If I'm going to church and I'm getting engaged in whether I believe or don't believe or wherever the spectrum of belief is, then that's good. Like one of the things that's really helped me was there's legacy builders. Like I'm Catholic, but legacy builders kind of Christian, and it's just peer-to-peer faith-based counseling. And so I got teamed up with another veteran that helped out a lot. So we like talk like once a week. So
man, thank you for sharing that, Phil.
Yeah.
I know there's somebody out there that needs to hear that.
Exactly.
And it's going to be very timely when they hear it.
Right.
And that's why I'm so grateful to Phil for sharing it with us. Because you're right. Someone out there needs to hear this. And someone out there will hear this, and it will mean something to them. something that you said, Phil, earlier is everyone is going through it. And that's a thought I have very often. I consider myself a compassionate person. I consider myself a humanitarian. And one of the saddest thoughts I can have, because I've had it before many times, is that there is someone out there right now who thinks they are utterly alone. And they couldn't be more wrong.
Right.
So that's part of why I do this with Jason. That's part of why I'm so grateful that I get to be on this podcast and speak to veterans like yourself.
Right.
And I'm always so humbled when I'm able to talk to individuals like you, Phil, for your vulnerability and sharing your struggle so openly and so bravely. So I really appreciate you being so open and honest with us.
No, that's, I mean, that is what we're here for, right?
Yeah. I'm really humbled by it.
Yeah. So it's like, we like have to be real, right? Because if you're fake, if you're just putting the facade up, then you are that Vietnam veteran who's never talked about anything and just has that wall up, and you're going to die with that wall up, right?
Yeah.
And like your kids and your grandkids are never going to hear your story.
They're going to be deprived of it.
You're never ever going to heal because you won't let yourself heal for whatever reason, and it's just that form of like self-punishment, right? And it doesn't need to be that way, right?
Correct.
I want to reinforce, this is the last thing I'll say, Jason. I want to reinforce what Phil said about it takes strength to ask for help. I feel like I can pretty clearly articulate why it takes so much strength. It is very difficult to tell someone, especially a stranger or someone you don't know very well, here are my needs, here's where I'm falling short, can you help me? That is a very difficult thing to do.
Yeah.
You know what the crazy thing was, like in the public sector, I had reached out to people like 2 or 3 times. Like, and I said, hey, here's everything I got, right? Like suicidal, addiction, whatever, all this crap. And then like, oh, we are going to put you on a wait list. And then like part of it was like suicidal and like, okay, yeah, we're going to put you on a 6-month wait list, right?
Yeah.
Or, I might have gone to the church, and then like that like failed like a couple times, right? And just people weren't like equipped. And then like, but then when I engaged in the VA, they're like, okay, like some of the things I had to wait for, but it was a lot better process. It's also like relatively free, right? And then so you're not paying for these expensive counselors. Like it's all there. It's almost like when we were in the military, we were assigned like X amount of ammo, right?
Sure.
And then after your mission, you would take your ammo and you'd shoot up in the air. You'd shoot like hundreds of thousands of rounds like up in the air at nothing.
To expend it.
Because if you didn't use it, you lost it, right?
Yeah.
And that's the same thing with the VA money. And that's like one of the reasons why I did engage in the VA, because like if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
And I think I was the only veteran that my people knew that used up all his GI Bill and college fund, because I engaged the veteran. I engaged the VA, and like we got everything taken care of and paid, and I used up all my money down to the last dime. So
it's there for veterans to use.
It's
You're only hurting yourself if you don't ask for it.
And the benefits are there, and it's like, and like the VA system and the VA hospital has been like immaculate. It wasn't like that dark dungeon, like you're like, oh my god, the dark dungeon with dirty needles and like these nurses that don't give a damn, and like all this like hocus pocus, right?
Yeah.
And it was a big, magnificent hospital with pharmacies that were quick and like stuff that came in my mail, and I get text messages, and it's very up to date. So
I really appreciate you sharing those stories, and I also really appreciate you having that story about the VA in particular, because as you just mentioned, the VA can be a place that people mistrust.
Right.
And I've spoken to several VA representatives lately, and they are striving to rebuild that trust. They know they've broken it with some communities and with veterans. They want to rebuild it, and they want to be there for the veteran community. Yeah.
I don't think I've ever had a bad experience, and I can't say, and I've hit it on multiple different angles, because just because now I'm freaking curious, and So I've never had a bad person or a bad experience.
I'm really happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Phil.
Yep.
Well, Phil, before we sign off, I want to say a couple things. I mean, first, thank you for coming to the show. Thank you for your service. Ethan and I always say and remind veterans, and I don't think they need to be reminded, but it takes a special human being to sign that blank check that says, this is a blank check up into, could include my life, and here I am. So I really appreciate the fact that you did that for our country, and I appreciate that you shared this vulnerable story of getting help. And there are people right now that I know that are in my life, in my circle, who need help, who need support from other veterans, need to hear these stories. And you did it very eloquently, and I'm very grateful. And with that, we're going to go ahead and sign off of the Operation Insight podcast from the Mid-America Veterans Museum.
Operation Insight is brought to you by the Mid-America Veterans Museum, where we believe every veteran has a story. If you agree and you enjoyed today's podcast, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and leave a review on whichever platform you listen. Don't forget, sharing this episode with friends and family is a great way to support the museum and our mission of sharing veteran stories. Thank you for listening.